Victor Hale pointed at the service door and told Lena Price the storm could have her. 300 guests stood beneath the glass atrium of the Arden Crown Hotel, dressed in black suits and silver gowns for the mayor's annual charity gala. A string quartet played near the marble fountain. Cameras waited by the ballroom doors, their lenses trained on the small stage where Victor was supposed to announce the hotel's new investor wing at midnight. It was the kind of night the Arden Crown had been preparing for all year, and in the middle of that polished lobby, under $30 million of glass and steel, the night janitor stood with a mop in one hand and a folded sheet of old blueprint paper in the other. Lena Price was 61, with silver hair pinned beneath a navy scarf, and a name badge most guests never looked at long enough to read. Her uniform was clean but worn at the cuffs. Her shoes were wet from the service corridor. The canvas bag hanging from her shoulder looked older than some of the young donors laughing beside the fountain. Most nights nobody saw her enter. That was how the Arden Crown worked after midnight. The guests saw flowers replaced before they wilted, fingerprints gone from brass before morning, carpets dry before checkout. They saw cleanliness and called it luxury. They did not see the people who bent down to make luxury look effortless. Lena saw everything. She saw the service elevator hesitate on humid nights before any guest complained. She saw the hairline gap where the east stairwell floor sloped the wrong way. She saw which ballroom doors swelled in summer and which emergency lights flickered before storms. For 3 years she had written small notes on maintenance, slips no one remembered receiving. Check west atrium trim after northeast rain. Drainage sound behind fountain wall. Water odor near brass column. The replies came back with stamped language. Observed, deferred. No action required. Once, a younger supervisor had laughed and told her, "Mrs. Price, you clean like the building owes you money." Lena had smiled because it was easier than explaining the truth. The building did not owe her money, it owed everyone inside it honesty. That night the storm turned every old note into a single line of water above the fountain. Victor saw the shoes first, then the mop, then the folded paper in her hand. "I asked you to clean the service hall," he said, smiling just enough for the donors nearby. "Not wander through my gala with dirty water on your shoes." The guests closest to them softened their voices, pretending not to listen. Lena did not look at her shoes, she looked up. Rain tapped against the glass roof like 1,000 fingernails. Along the highest rib of the atrium, water slid down the inside of the steel, disappeared behind brass trim, then gathered again above the fountain. It should not have been there. Rain belonged outside the glass. That thin silver line was on the wrong side of the building. "Mr. Hale," Lena said, "you need to move everyone away from the west half of the lobby." The quartet kept playing, but one violin note came in late. Victor's smile tightened. "Excuse me?" Lena unfolded the blueprint one careful crease at a time. It was faded blue and soft at the corners, the kind of paper someone keeps only if it carries a memory or a warning. Near the lower edge, red pencil marked an old support line that had been opened and closed so many times the crease had begun to split through it. "The wind shifted northeast 20 minutes ago," Lena said. "If water is reaching this brace, the atrium is taking diagonal load." Victor glanced toward the ballroom doors. Preston Vale had just arrived. Everyone in the Arden Crown knew Preston Vale's face, even if they pretended not to. He was the investor whose foundation was supposed to fund the new wing, the wing that would turn Victor from manager into regional director. The wing whose announcement had been rehearsed 3 times that afternoon, so nothing, absolutely nothing would interrupt it. Victor lowered his voice. "Put that away." "Sir, I am not trying to embarrass you." "No," Victor said, stepping closer. "You are trying to make yourself important." A few guests turned their faces away. Others watched over the rims of champagne glasses. Near the fountain, an elderly man with a cane stood under the atrium, confused by the sudden silence. Lena saw him. She saw the waterline above him. She saw the old red mark in her mind before she found it again on the page. "Please," she said, "at least move the guests by the fountain." At the front desk, Maya Ortiz had gone still with a phone in her hand. Maya was 32, careful, efficient, and tired in the way people become tired when every mistake at work could become a rent problem at home. Her younger brother's nursing school tuition was due in 9 days. Victor knew it. The scheduling office knew it. Maya knew that being brave in a lobby full of donors was not as simple as it looked from the outside. But she also saw the drop. It fell from the brass trim and landed beside the elderly man's cane. Tiny, almost nothing. Except that Lena had been looking there before it fell. Victor did not see it, or he chose not to. "You are a night janitor," he said. The words were not loud, but the lobby had become quiet enough to carry them. Lena held his eyes. "Tonight, yes." That small answer did more damage to Victor's pride than an argument would have. He looked toward Preston Vale, he looked toward the cameras, he looked toward the staff members who were suddenly waiting to see whether the manager still controlled his own lobby. "Clock out," he said. "Leave through the loading dock. If you come back into this lobby tonight, I will have security remove you." Maya's lips parted. Victor turned just enough for her to close them again. Lena folded the blueprint, slower this time. "Move them," she said. Victor pointed to the service corridor. Now, no one clapped, no one laughed. The humiliation was worse because it landed in silence. Lena walked past the fountain, past Mr. Bell and his cane, past the cameras waiting for a better story. Mr. Bell turned as she passed and looked at her badge. "Lena," he read quietly. She stopped for half a second. "Please stand closer to the ballroom doors, sir." Mr. Bell looked up at the glass. "Is something wrong?" Lena almost answered. Then Victor called from behind her, "Mrs. Price." The warning in his voice was clear, so she only said, "The floor is slippery there." It was the smallest lie she could tell to move him 3 steps east. Mr. Bell obeyed. Maya saw that too. The loading dock door opened into hard rain and yellow streetlight. Lena stepped outside, pulling her coat around the canvas bag pressed against her ribs. The music inside became a soft pulse through the hotel wall. For a moment, she looked like a woman who had lost another job. Wet shoes, gray hair under a navy scarf. A name badge no one had bothered to read. Inside, Victor took the microphone from the stage assistant and tested his smile in the reflection of a black window. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to no one yet, "thank you for trusting the Arden Crown on such an historic night." He stopped, too bright. He softened the smile. "Better." Preston Vale was speaking with the mayor near the ballroom doors. The camera crew had moved closer. The investor wing announcement would run in the morning papers. If the night went perfectly, Victor would be the man who delivered the biggest expansion in Arden Crown history. If the night looked unsafe, nervous, badly managed, or embarrassing, Preston would delay the funds. Victor had spent 19 years becoming the kind of man donors trusted because his lobby never looked surprised. He was not going to let a fired janitor with an old piece of paper turn the most important night of his career into a safety drill. He crossed to the front desk. "Maya," she straightened. "Yes, Mr. Hale. If Mrs. Price comes back inside, call security before you call me." Maya's fingers tightened around the phone. She said there was water in the atrium support. She said many things. "I saw a drop near Mr. Bell." Victor paused just long enough for Maya to hope he might turn and look. Then he leaned closer. "Do you want to be responsible for clearing 300 guests out of this lobby in the middle of a donor announcement because you saw a drop of water during a storm?" Maya said nothing. "Do you know what that would do to this hotel?" She thought of her brother's tuition invoice folded in her locker. She thought of the second job she had quit because Victor promised her a supervisor track. She thought of how easily a supervisor track could become a final warning. "No," she said. "Good," Victor replied. "Then let maintenance handle maintenance." He turned away before she could ask which maintenance team because the night maintenance lead was at home with the flu and the only person who had noticed the leak had just been thrown into the rain. Maya looked toward the fountain. Mr. Bell had moved 3 steps east. Another drop fell where he had been standing. The water vanished into the red carpet almost immediately. That made it worse. Things were easier to ignore when they disappeared. Victor walked through the lobby with his smile restored. He stopped beside Preston Vale and lowered his voice into the warm register he used for powerful men. "Mr. Vale, we're ready when you are. Just a small staff issue already handled." Preston looked toward the service corridor. "Everything all right?" "Perfectly." That word reached Maya like a slap. Perfectly above the fountain. Another drop fell. At 11:21 p.m., Victor made the decision that would nearly cost the Arden Crown its name. He did not call the fire department. He did not move the guests. He did not even walk to the atrium column and touch the wet brass himself. He called Dana Cho. Dana was the hotel's on-call building engineer, a precise woman with short black hair, a rain jacket, and a voice that made problems sound smaller than they were. Victor liked that about her. A problem Dana named calmly became a manageable issue. A manageable issue could be handled after the gala. She answered on the 4th ring. "Cho, Dana, I need you at the lobby atrium now. Is there active leakage?" Victor looked toward the ceiling. From where he stood under the warm chandelier near the ballroom doors, the glass looked flawless. A staff member overreacted to storm runoff. Which staff member? Victor hesitated. Lena Price. There was a pause on the line. Not long, but long enough. "Dana, I'm on my way," she said. Victor did not like the pause. He liked even less that Dana had not asked who Lena Price was. At the loading dock, rainwater ran in silver ropes from the awning. Lena stood still under it, one hand against the concrete wall, waiting for the small tremor beneath her palm to come again. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Only rain. Only the distant pulse of music through the wall. Only the kind of silence that makes a person feel foolish for trusting their own fear. Then thunder rolled across the roof, and the concrete gave the smallest shiver. Lena closed her eyes, not because she was afraid, because she recognized it. Some buildings groaned, some buildings complained in ways most people never heard. The Arden Crown had always spoken through its braces. 28 years earlier, when the hotel was still a half-built skeleton and Lena was a junior structural drafter working nights under a buzzing desk lamp, she had learned the language of this building, one red pencil line at a time. She opened the canvas bag. The blueprint was damp at the edges. She shielded it with her coat and turned toward the service stair. That was when she saw the mark. Half hidden beneath beige paint, chipped by a rolling cart or years of careless shoes, a stamped code showed through on the lower wall. A 17. Lena forgot the rain. She forgot Victor. She forgot the last check he had promised to send. Her finger touched the mark like a person touching an old scar. No, she whispered, because if a 17 was here, and water was inside the west rib, then the leak was not above the lobby. It was inside the brace that was never supposed to carry tonight's wind alone. Inside, the lobby lights warmed, the cameras adjusted, and Victor Hale told everyone to take their places. Dana Cho was 3 minutes away. Maya Ortiz was still holding the phone, and 300 guests stood under glass that had just begun to remember every warning the hotel had ignored. Dana Cho entered the Arden Crown through the east staff door with rain shining on the shoulders of her jacket and a tablet tucked under one arm. She did not look like panic. That was the first reason Victor relaxed. Dana moved quickly, but not dramatically. She nodded to the front desk, glanced at the atrium, then looked at the ceiling the way doctors look at patients who insist the pain is probably nothing. "Where's the active leak?" she asked. Victor walked beside her, careful to angle his body between Dana and the cameras. "There may not be one. I need you to confirm that." Dana stopped. "That is not how confirming works." Victor's smile flickered. "There are 300 guests in this lobby and a donor announcement in 30 minutes. I need language I can use." "You need a building that is safe, and is it?" Dana looked up. Rain sheeted across the glass roof. The atrium lights made every pane glow gold from the center of the lobby. The space looked expensive, grand, untouchable. Then Dana stepped beneath the west rib and saw what Lena had seen. A thin wet line behind brass trim. Not a drip from a loose gasket, not normal condensation. Something traveling where it should not. Her face changed so slightly that only Maya noticed. "I need the renovation file," Dana said. Victor exhaled. A file sounded better than an alarm. A file sounded official, controlled, private. "Maya," he called, "get Dana the atrium renovation folder." Maya opened the cabinet behind the desk. Her hands moved automatically through labeled binders: kitchen permits, ballroom electrical, fire inspection, elevator service, atrium renovation. The folder was thick, cream-colored, and newer than the building. It had the hotel's current logo printed on the front. She handed it to Dana. Dana spread the pages on the counter. Victor leaned close. "You see? Full renovation package." Dana did not answer. She turned one page, then another. The plans showed the atrium glass replacement from 6 years earlier. They showed new drainage gutters, new sealants, new brass trim, new decorative lighting. They showed load tables stamped by the renovation contractor. They did not show A17. Dana flipped back to the structural index. "No A17. What are you looking for?" Maya asked. Dana's finger hovered over the page. "Old transfer brace schedule." Victor's jaw tightened. "Is it necessary?" "If the original support was modified, yes." "Was it modified?" Dana looked at him. "That is what I'm trying to find out." The investor announcement was now 26 minutes away. Preston Vale was posing for photos near the ballroom doors. The mayor's aide was checking the order of speeches. A server adjusted the champagne tower beside the stage. Every detail of the night kept moving forward because Victor had built his career around making forward motion look inevitable. Dana pulled up the digital maintenance archive on her tablet. The Wi-Fi lagged. Victor watched the spinning icon like it was an insult. "How long?" "As long as the server takes. Can you make a preliminary assessment?" Dana looked up at the wet line again. "Preliminary means incomplete." "Dana," she heard the warning in his voice. She had heard it before from building owners, event directors, contractors trying to make inspection language bend around a deadline. She also knew the Arden Crown paid her company well, and she knew Victor had a talent for making caution look like incompetence when he needed a scapegoat. "I can say there is no visible deformation from the lobby floor," she said carefully. Victor seized on the sentence. "Good, that is not at all clear, but there is no visible deformation from the lobby floor." Victor turned to Maya. "Please note that." Maya did not write it down. Dana noticed, so did Victor. "Maya," he said, "is there a problem?" Maya looked at the fountain. Mr. Bell was no longer under the west rib, because Lena had moved him with the excuse about the floor. But other guests had drifted into the space, laughing, photographing the glass ceiling, holding their phones up to capture the storm. One young woman spun beneath the atrium and said, "This is gorgeous." Another drop fell behind her. Maya swallowed. "No problem," she said. The lie tasted like metal outside. Lena knelt beside the service stair with the blueprint spread across her knees. Rainwater crawled toward the paper. She shifted under the awning and held the old sheet close to the wall. A 17, the stamped mark on the concrete matched the red mark on her plan exactly. For years, Lena had told herself she kept the blueprint because it was proof that she had once been more than the job titles people handed her. More than night janitor. More than part-time cleaner. More than the woman who came in after everyone important went home. But that was not the whole truth. She kept it because of one night in 1998. The Arden Crown had still been unfinished then, all exposed beams and temporary lights. Lena was 33, recently hired by a structural firm that gave her markups nobody wanted and overtime nobody thanked her for. The senior engineer, Martin Kess, signed everything. The clients spoke to him. The contractors called him. If Lena pointed out a problem, Martin repeated it louder in the next meeting and everyone praised his eye. She had learned not to care who got credit if the building stood. Then the storm load model came back wrong. Not dramatically wrong, not wrong in a way that made men in suits stop talking. Wrong in a quiet diagonal way. The atrium had been designed for the usual west-facing storm load, but one weather study showed rare northeast pressure wrapping around the tower and driving force into a brace, meant only to transfer secondary vibration. A 17 Martin had called it unlikely. Lena had called it possible, Martin had called possible expensive. So she stayed late. She drew the correction, a second load path, a reinforcement note. A warning that if a 17 ever carried water through the cavity during a northeast storm, the atrium should be cleared until the support was inspected. She wrote the note in red. Martin signed the final plan in black. Years later, when the firm downsized, Lena's name disappeared from the office door before it ever appeared on a plaque. Her mother got sick. Bills became heavier than pride. Work became work. The Arden Crown opened with champagne and speeches. Lena watched part of it on a television in a hospital waiting room, but she kept the copy, because the building knew, because paper remembered, because sometimes the only proof a quiet person has is the thing no one else bothered to keep. Lena ran her thumb over the red mark. A 17 was not just wet. It was active. She stood and looked at the service door. Victor had fired her. Security might be waiting. The hotel might call her unstable, bitter, confused, old, replaceable. People had called her softer versions of those words for years, but inside that lobby under the glass, people were still standing where Lena would never stand now. She folded the blueprint. Then she opened the service door. Inside, Victor had moved the donor announcement up by 10 minutes. He called it efficient. Maya knew it was fear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor said into the microphone, "because the storm has brought us all closer together tonight, we are going to begin a little early." Light laughter moved through the crowd. Dana looked up from the file. "Victor," he covered the microphone. "What?" "I do not have the original brace schedule." "You have the renovation file." "The renovation file references an original schedule that is not attached. Is that unusual?" Dana's eyes did not move from his. "It is inconvenient." "Inconvenient is not unsafe. It is also not safe." Victor's fingers tightened around the microphone. At that moment, Lena stepped out of the service corridor. Maya saw her first rain darkened Lena's scarf. Her uniform clung to her sleeves. The canvas bag was tucked under one arm and in her hand was the folded blueprint. "Mrs. Price," Maya whispered, moving from behind the desk. "You cannot be here." He called security. "Then call the fire department first." Maya looked toward Victor, the microphone in his hand, the investors near the cameras, the guests under glass. "If this is wrong," Maya said, "I lose my job." Lena's face softened, not with pity, but with recognition. "Who are you keeping it for?" Maya blinked. "Your job," Lena said. "Who needs it?" Maya looked away. "My brother." "Then think about what he would need you to do if he were standing under that glass." It was not a speech. Lena did not have time for one. She turned toward the fountain. Another drop fell. This time it hit Mr. Bell's sleeve. Maya saw him flinch. She saw him look up. She saw the exact space where he had been standing before Lena moved him. Her face changed. Victor saw Lena crossing the lobby and his announcement broke mid-sentence. "I told you to leave." Lena did not stop for him. She went to the brass column beneath the atrium, knelt beside the fountain and slid 2 fingers under the trim. They came back wet, gray, and gritty with old sealant. Dana was beside her in 3 seconds. "Do that again," Dana said. Victor stepped down from the small stage. Dana, do not encourage this. Lena pressed her fingers into the seam and drew out another streak of gray water. Dana's expression tightened. That is not surface runoff. Thank you, Lena said. Victor pointed at the blueprint. She has been carrying that thing around for years. Ask anyone in housekeeping. This is a performance. Dana turned to Lena. Where did you get the plan? I drew the correction. The sentence landed strangely, because it did not sound like pride. It sounded like a fact Lena had been tired of holding. Victor laughed once. You drew the Arden Crown atrium correction. The storm load correction, Lena said, for a 17. Dana looked at the old blueprint, then at the renovation folder, then back at the old blueprint. A Dwen 17 is not in the current file, she said, because the current file is incomplete, Lena replied. Victor's face went red. Enough. Maya reached for the phone. Victor saw her. Maya. Her hand stopped above the receiver. The whole lobby seemed to wait inside that 1 inch of air. Maya thought of her brother. She thought of tuition. She thought of Victor's voice saying, Do you want to be responsible? Then Mr. Bell said very softly, Young lady? Maya looked at him. He held up his sleeve where the water had struck it. If someone knows where we should stand, he said, I would like to stand there. Maya picked up the phone. Victor moved toward her, but Dana stepped into his path. Let her make the call, Dana said. You said there was no visible deformation. And now there is water inside a support cavity tied to a missing brace schedule. You are changing your assessment because of her? Dana looked at Lena, then at the gray streak on her own fingertips. No, she said, because of that. Maya dialed emergency services. The dispatcher answered in a voice so calm it almost made Maya cry. Emergency services. What is your location? Maya looked at the hotel logo on the desk as if she might forget where she was. Arden Crown Hotel, main lobby, possible structural failure in the glass atrium. Victor's face changed at the words structural failure, not because he believed them, but because words become records when spoken into emergency lines. Maya, he said, very softly now, choose your next sentence carefully. The dispatcher asked, Are there injuries? Maya looked at Mr. Bell, at the guests, at the glass. Not yet. That was the sentence that made Dana close her eyes for half a second. Not yet was not panic. Not yet was exactly why the call mattered. The dispatcher stayed with Maya, asking for entrances, guest count, visible hazards, whether evacuation had started. Maya answered what she knew and looked to Lena for what she did not. Lena gave short answers with her finger on the blueprint. East ballroom doors, service passage behind kitchen. Avoid west fountain, keep mobility assistance along interior wall. Every answer changed Maya's voice. It grew steadier because it had something to hold. Victor turned and signaled to the security guard near the service corridor. Remove her, he said, pointing at Lena. The guard was named Omar. He had worked weekends at the Arden Crown for 6 years and had spent most of that time being invisible beside doors that cost more than his car. He looked at Lena, then at Dana, then at the watermark on the brass trim. Sir, Omar said, from the lobby? From the property. Omar did not move. Emergency call is active, he said. I cannot interfere with that. Victor stared at him as if a chair had spoken. That small refusal traveled through the staff faster than any announcement. A server saw Omar stay still. The bell captain saw it. Maya saw it. People who had spent years obeying Victor's tone learned it all at once that the tone was not a law. Preston Vale saw it too. He left the mayor's side and came toward the front desk, no longer smiling for cameras. Victor, he said, why is security being asked to remove the person talking to emergency services? Victor's mouth opened. For once the sentence he needed did not arrive on time. Lena unfolded the blueprint across the front desk. The old paper covered the polished stone like a wound opening in public. Guests began whispering. Cameras turned. Preston Vale stepped down from the stage area, his face no longer warm with donor patience. Victor, Preston said, what is happening? For the first time that night, Victor had no clean sentence ready. The alarm had not sounded yet. The fire department had not arrived. The atrium had not failed. But the perfect story Victor had built around the night was already cracking. And this time, everyone could see the line. Maya's voice shook the first time she spoke into the lobby microphone. Attention guests, please remain calm. Victor turned toward her so sharply that several people near the stage stepped back. Maya, stop. She heard him. Everyone heard him, but her eyes were on Lena's blueprint, on Dana Cho's gray-stained fingertips, and on Mr. Bell standing carefully away from the fountain with water darkening one sleeve of his jacket. Maya pressed the button again. Please move calmly through the east ballroom doors. Staff will assist you away from the atrium. The string quartet stopped. That was when the room understood something had changed. Not when Lena warned them, not when Dana asked for the file, not when the old blueprint spread across the front desk. Those things had been easy to treat as staff trouble, technical language, something happening below the level of guest concern. But music stopping in a luxury hotel is its own kind of alarm. Guests began to turn toward the ballroom. Victor stepped in front of Maya. "You are creating panic." Maya kept her finger on the microphone. "No, I'm creating movement." Dana looked at her once, and in that look Maya knew she had crossed a line she could never uncross. Then Dana turned to the staff gathered near the service hall. "Open the east doors, keep people off the west carpet. No running." 2 kitchen workers moved first, then the bell captain. Then a server who had been holding a tray of champagne for so long her wrist was shaking. Action spread faster than permission. Lena stayed at the front desk, one hand on the blueprint. "The ballroom doors are safe," Maya asked her. "For now," Lena said. "Keep them close to the east wall. Do not let anyone cut under the fountain." "How many?" Lena looked at the room the way she had once looked at plans. Exits, bottlenecks, bodies, distance, time. 200 through the ballroom. 50 through the east corridor, if they are near the entrance. Staff through the kitchen line. Anyone with a cane goes first through service passage. Maya repeated it into the microphone, calmer this time. The calmness helped people forgive fear when it sounds organized. The first 30 guests moved because they were closest to the doors. The next 50 moved because the first 30 had moved. That was how public courage worked in rooms like this. Almost no one wanted to be the first to believe danger, but almost everyone could become the second. A woman in a silver dress tried to laugh as she gathered her shawl. "Is this a drill?" The server beside her looked at Lena before answering. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Please treat it like a real one." It was not the official language, but it was the right language. The woman moved. Near the fountain, a young man lifted his phone toward the ceiling. Omar, the security guard who had refused to remove Lena, stepped into his path. "Sir, record from the ballroom if you need to record. I'm press. Then you can report that you followed safety instructions." The young man lowered the phone. Small choices began stacking on one another. A waiter held the ballroom door. A kitchen porter dragged a service cart out of the passage to widen the route. A violinist carried her instrument case in one hand and guided a guest with the other. People who had been decoration in Victor's perfect evening became useful the moment the evening stopped being perfect. Lena noticed all of it. She also noticed the people who did not move. There were always some: the embarrassed, the offended, the powerful. The people who believed danger should introduce itself politely before interrupting them. She pointed to a cluster by the champagne tower. "Maya, that group. They are waiting for permission from someone in a suit." Maya did not ask which suit. She lifted the microphone. "If you are near the champagne tower, please follow the server in the black vest now. Do not wait for your table host." The group moved. Victor heard the line and understood the insult inside it. Do not wait for your table host. Do not wait for Victor. Do not wait for the man who had made waiting dangerous. Victor did not. He moved toward Preston Vale, who was standing beside the stage with the mayor's aide and 2 camera operators. "This is precautionary," Victor said. An overabundance of caution. Preston looked at the ceiling. "Why is the janitor directing your lobby?" The question landed exactly where Victor feared it would. He did not answer quickly enough. Before he could recover, the revolving doors pushed open and Captain Rios entered with rain across his shoulders and 2 firefighters behind him. The lobby became 2 rooms at once. One room was gala guests moving in careful lines, gathering purses, asking whether they should take their coats, looking up despite being told not to. The other room was the small hard center around the front desk. Lena, Maya, Dana, Victor, and now Rios. Captain Rios took in the scene in one sweep. Water at the trim. Guests under glass. Old blueprint on the counter. Hotel manager too close to the microphone. "Who called it in?" he asked. Maya lifted one hand. "I did." Victor spoke over her. "Captain, this is a precaution based on incomplete information. Incomplete information is what we usually get before something becomes complete the hard way," Rios said. He turned to Dana, engineer, Dana Cho, contract building engineer. Assessment. Dana did not look at Victor. Visible water intrusion inside west atrium support cavity. Current renovation file does not include original A17 brace schedule. This blueprint may be the missing correction. Rios looked at Lena. "And you are?" Victor answered first. "Former staff." The words were meant to shrink her. They did not. Lena held out the blueprint. "Lena Price. I drafted the storm load correction for A17 in 1998. Rios took the paper carefully. The way people handle old evidence, even before they know what case it belongs to. The blueprint trembled slightly in the draft from the revolving doors. He studied the red mark, then the ceiling, then the mark again. "Show me the physical point." Lena moved without waiting for Victor. Dana followed. Rios signaled one firefighter to keep the west area clear and another to watch guest movement. Under the atrium column, Lena pointed to the seam. The water is traveling behind this trim. If a 17 is taking diagonal load and the cavity is wet, the brace can torque. The glass may not fail first. The support alignment can. Victor arrived behind them. Captain, with respect, this is a hotel lobby, not a classroom. Rios ignored him. He touched the wet sealant and rubbed it between his fingers. How long has this been dripping? Maya answered from behind them. At least 15 minutes since I saw it. Mrs. Price saw it before that. Rios looked at Dana. Can you verify from current file? No, Dana said. That is the problem. Can you disprove her blueprint? Dana took a breath. No, that answer changed the air. Rios handed the blueprint back to Lena. Then we treat it as compromised until proven otherwise. Victor's voice sharpened. You are shutting down my gala because of a janitor's private paperwork. Rios turned to him. For the first time all night, Victor looked like a man used to commanding rooms who had entered the wrong one. No, Rios said. I am taking the building's word. She is the only one who listened to it. The line moved through the lobby faster than the alarm. Maya heard it. Mr. Bell heard it. Preston Vale heard it. And Victor, who had spent the entire night choosing which words would become the public story, understood that this one would not belong to him. The fire alarm began in full then. Not a chirp, not a question, a clear, pulsing command. Guests moved faster but not wildly. The bell captain stood at the ballroom doors counting people under his breath. 2 servers guided a woman in high heels away from the west carpet. A kitchen worker brought out a wheelchair for a guest who had been leaning heavily on a chair back. Lena stepped into the center of the lobby. She did not shout at first. She raised one hand, and somehow that was enough for the staff nearest her. Ballroom first, she said. East wall only. Keep the center clear for fire crew. Maya repeated it through the microphone. Ballroom first. East wall only. Please keep the center clear. Dana watched the ceiling. Rios watched the crowd. Victor watched the cameras. That was still his mistake. Near the investor banner, a photographer had pulled 3 donors into position, insisting he could get one final shot before they moved. The banner read Arden Crown, Future Wing in silver letters. Preston Vale's foundation logo sat below it. Victor saw the donors, the banner, the camera, and the still salvageable shape of the story. One photo. One image proving the night had not become chaos. Keep them there for a moment, he told the photographer. Maya heard him over the microphone line and froze. Lena did not. She turned. The photo area was under the west rib. Not directly beneath the first water stain, but close enough that if the support shifted, glass would not ask which guests had been most important. Move them now? Lena said. Victor stepped between her and the photographer. They are 10 feet from the marked zone. There is no safe 10 feet under a failing atrium. You are not in charge here. Lena looked at him. The alarm flashed red across her face. Rain streaked the glass above them. Behind Victor, a donor laughed nervously as the photographer adjusted his lens. Then be in charge, Lena said. Tell them to move. Victor did not. It was only a second. But history often turns on the seconds people use to protect themselves. Lena went around him. Victor grabbed her sleeve. She stopped, looked down at his hand, and waited. The waiting shamed him more than a struggle would have. He let go. Lena crossed the wet marble and raised her voice for the first time all night. Leave the bags. The photographer lowered the camera. One donor clutched her purse. My phone is inside. Leave it. Something in Lena's tone cut through the panic because it did not sound like panic. It sounded like a person who had already measured the distance between life and belongings and found the answer obvious. The donors moved. The photographer moved. The banner rippled in the draft from the open ballroom doors. Photo area clear. Maya called. Rios pointed to the east corridor. Last sweep, the firefighters moved fast. 200 guests had already entered the ballroom. 54 moved through the east corridor. 23 staff crossed behind the kitchen line. Mr. Bell was seated near the interior wall with a blanket over his knees, one hand still around his cane. Maya counted twice. Her first count was wrong because her hands were shaking. Her second was steady. 3 guests missing, she said. Victor closed his eyes, not in fear for the guests, in the sudden terror of a man realizing the story might still get worse. Where? Rios asked. Restroom corridor, Maya said. Lena knew the corridor. It curved behind the west stair and opened near the fountain. That path passes under the brace, Dana said. Rios pointed to a firefighter. With me. Lena took one step. Rios stopped her. No, I know the turn and I know falling glass. The refusal was not disrespect, it was command. For a second, Lena almost fought it. Then Maya grabbed the lobby map from behind the desk and thrust it toward Rios. Here, Maya said, marking the service passage with a pen. This door, it opens behind the corridor, kitchen side. Lena looked at Maya. Maya looked back. The first ally had become useful under pressure. Rios took the map. Good. The rescue took 90 seconds. It felt like 9 minutes. The missing guests were 2 young men and an older woman who had ignored the first announcement because they thought it was a drill. When the firefighter brought them through the kitchen line, the older woman was crying, embarrassed and angry at herself. Lena did not scold her. She only guided her to a chair away from the glass. "You are here," Lena said. "That is enough." The count reached 300. Maya said the number into the radio twice. 300 accounted for. Staff accounted for. Dana looked up. The wet line had widened. The brass trim along the west rib trembled once, not much, just enough for those watching to stop breathing. "Doors," Rios said. The ballroom doors began closing. Victor stood on the wrong side of them. For one strange second, he did not move. He looked at the lobby he had tried to control. The red carpet, the fountain, the investor banner, the cameras, the empty space where guests had been standing, the woman with the blueprint he had tried to throw away. Maya called his name. "Mr. Hale," he moved then, not elegantly, not with authority. He stumbled through the ballroom doors as the first sound came from above the fountain. It was not a crash. It was a long, tired groan, metal remembering every storm it had survived. Glass remembering every warning written beneath it. Then the center panes of the atrium burst inward. Rain and glass fell across the empty marble. It covered the fountain, the red carpet, the investor banner, the place where Mr. Bell had been standing, and the exact square of floor where Victor had wanted one last photograph. Behind the closed doors, no one spoke. Not the mayor, not Preston Vale, not Victor. The alarm kept pulsing, but even that seemed far away. Lena stood with one hand on the blueprint and the other against the ballroom door until the shaking in the building faded. Then Mr. Bell's voice came from behind her. "Is everyone here?" Maya looked at her count sheet. Dana looked at Rios. Rios looked through the small window in the ballroom door at the destroyed empty atrium. "Everyone is here," he said. For the first time that night, Lena let herself breathe. For 3 minutes after the atrium fell, the ballroom stayed almost completely silent. Not because no one had anything to say, because every person in that room was busy counting backward, counting where they had stood, counting how many steps had moved them away, counting the seconds between annoyance and survival. Mr. Bell sat near the east wall with both hands on his cane. A server had wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, even though he kept insisting he was not cold. Across the room, the young woman who had wanted her phone back stared at her empty hands and cried without making a sound. Maya stood by the ballroom doors with the count sheet pressed against her chest. 300 guests, 23 staff, no one under the glass. She had written the numbers twice, then a third time because her eyes kept blurring. Victor sat on the edge of the stage where he had planned to give his announcement. The microphone lay on the floor beside him. No one had picked it up. Preston Vale stood near the mayor, speaking quietly into his phone. Every few seconds he looked at Victor, then at Lena, then at the closed ballroom doors beyond which the lobby had become a field of broken glass. Dana Cho was at a side table with Captain Rios, rebuilding the chain of evidence. Current renovation file, missing original brace schedule, water in support cavity, a 17-mark blueprint, physical failure. It was no longer a question of whether Lena had overreacted. The only question left was why the hotel had been able to forget the person who remembered what mattered. At 2:14 in the morning, the first local reporter arrived at the police line outside the Arden Crown. By 303 camera crews were across the street. By dawn, every headline used the same 2 words. No injuries. The phrase moved through the city faster than the storm. No injuries after atrium collapse. No injuries at Arden Crown Gala. No injuries after 300 guests evacuated minutes before glass failure. Victor heard the phrase from a paramedic first and flinched as if it accused him. Lena heard it from Maya and closed her eyes. No injuries. That was the only number that mattered. Everything else could wait. But by morning, the waiting ended. The hotel's ownership group arrived in dark coats and damp shoes, faces pale under the lobby's emergency lights. They entered through the conference wing because the main lobby was sealed off. Behind them came a records manager carrying archive boxes pulled from basement storage, the kind of boxes nobody opens until something has gone wrong enough to make old paper powerful again. Dana asked for every atrium file before the 2004 renovation. The records manager found them in the third box. Original structural set, storm load correction, supplemental brace schedule. A 17, the paper was yellowed at the edges, but the red correction line was still there. So was the note Lena remembered writing in the margin. If water intrusion is observed at a 17 during northeast storm load, clear atrium pending inspection. The room went still around the table. Dana turned the page. Near the bottom edge, in small block letters, was the name no guest had known, no plaque had carried, and no manager had thought to ask about before pointing toward the service exit. L. Price. Maya saw it first. She covered her mouth with one hand. Captain Rios looked from the page to Lena. "That is you." Lena stared at the letters. For a moment, she was not in the damaged hotel. She was back under the buzzing lamp, younger, tired, drawing a line she had been told was unnecessary. She had not been dramatic. She had not been trying to be important. She had been right. "Yes," she said. "Just that." Victor was standing near the conference room door when the ownership chair asked him what he had known and when he had known it. He tried at first to answer like a manager. He spoke of incomplete information. He spoke of event pressure. He spoke of a staff member acting outside normal reporting structure. Then Maya placed the count sheet on the table. 300 guests, 23 staff, time of first warning, time of first visible water, time Victor ordered Lena out. Time emergency services were called. Maya's handwriting shook in the early lines and steadied near the end. That steadiness told its own story. Victor stopped talking. Preston Vale withdrew the investor announcement before 9 o'clock. Not the funds entirely, not yet, but the celebration. The cameras would not film a ribbon, a handshake, or Victor's smile beneath a banner. The only announcement that morning was a full independent safety audit, the temporary closure of the Arden Crown atrium, and Victor's removal from safety decisions pending review. At 9:17 a.m., Victor stood in the damaged lobby with the ownership group behind him and reporters in front of him. The fountain was covered. The red carpet was gone. The glass doors were streaked with rain and dust. Morning light touched the broken atrium and made it look less like a luxury feature than a warning finally visible to everyone. Lena stood beside Maya, not in the center, not behind the owners, not staged for forgiveness. Victor's suit was wrinkled. His voice had lost the bright polish he used at galas. "Mrs. Price," he said, "I was wrong." The cameras shifted toward Lena. She did not move. "You warned me?" Victor continued. "I ignored you. I humiliated you in front of this hotel, and your warning saved lives." The words were correct. That did not make them enough. The ownership chair stepped forward next. "The Arden Crown will restore Lena Price's credit in the building record. Her original storm load correction will be added to the Public Safety Archive. We are opening a full structural audit today, and Mrs. Price has been invited to consult on that process if she chooses." Reporters called questions. How long had the file been incomplete? Who removed the brace schedule? Was the gala rushed? Would Victor remain manager? The questions hit the room like rain against glass. Lena answered none of them. She unfolded the old blueprint one last time on the front desk, now covered with dust from the broken atrium. Her fingers smoothed the crease over a 17. Then she pointed to another mark, smaller, near the east stairwell. "Start there," she said. The ownership chair blinked. "Another issue? Drainage slope is wrong, not urgent like a 17. But wrong. For the first time since the glass fell." Maya laughed. Not loudly, just enough to let the room remember they were alive. Victor looked at Lena as if he expected a speech. Maybe forgiveness, maybe anger, maybe something that would let the cameras turn the morning into a simpler story. Lena gave him none of that. She folded the blueprint along its old creases and placed it back in the canvas bag. Mr. Bell, still wrapped in a hotel blanket, stood with effort and tapped his cane once against the floor. "Mrs. Price," he said. Lena turned. "Thank you for moving me." That was the apology she accepted, not because it came from power, because it came from the place where the danger had been real. Outside, the storm had thinned to silver rain. The city looked washed and exhausted. News vans lined the curb. Hotel staff stood in small groups near the conference wing, watching the woman they had passed for years, as if seeing her required learning a new kind of sight. Victor stepped aside before she reached the main doors. This time, no one pointed her toward the service exit. Maya walked with her as far as the threshold. "Are you coming back?" Maya asked. Lena looked at the lobby, at the taped-off atrium, at the owners gathered around the old plans, at Victor standing very still beneath a ceiling he no longer trusted. "For the audit," she said. "Not for the mob." Maya smiled. Lena stepped through the main doors with the blueprint under her arm. She was not leaving because she had been thrown away. She was not leaving because the room had finally learned to clap. She walked out because she had done what she came to do. By morning, everyone knew her name had been on the hotel long before Victor tried to erase it. And the Arden Crown, silent under the clearing sky, stood because the person no one had listened to had listened first.